All right. Hello, and welcome back to the Right Brain Podcast. Dr. Rob is back in town.
Yep, back here in Music City.
We're very excited to have him back. I'm wearing really high heels, which the guy who's filming this right now told me that I look like I'm 6'1", which I probably am.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's really tall. But today we're going to talk about epigenetics because my dad called me this week and he was like, we have to talk about epigenetics, which I don't know much about. I just remember one of my little brother's friends like drunkenly trying to get in a fight with you about it once. And
Shout out to Finn.
And I was like, ooh, you don't want to get in a fight with him about this type of stuff, but I'd love to watch this play out. So it was very entertaining for me to watch. But yeah, I'm going to be learning a lot today too, because epigenetics are probably the most fascinating thing on the face of the earth, but I really don't know too much about them. And I'm sure
Very interesting.
some of you guys don't know either.
So, really I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have out there, like when you think of mental health issues, when you think of certain diseases, do you think of them as genetic? Like, how would you think of them? Not knowing like anything like epigenetics. Like, what do you think? Like, what have you heard? What do you think is the governing thought out there? Like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, things like that. Like, would you say it's genetic?
I wouldn't say those types of things are genetic. I mean, I know a little bit just from being like your daughter, how you've explained things to me, just brain wise. I would assume that it's like if you're more of like, if you have two right brain parents and they're super creative, like their kid will probably be more prone to like anxiety and depression. But when I don't think about those types of things as a genetic thing as much as like,
when you hear something is genetic, what does that mean to you? Like, what do you think that means?
It's like,
or what do you think the average person thinks?
Like you go to the doctor and they're like, does your family have a history of cardiovascular disease, or does your family are there a lot of heart attacks in your family or things like that, where you're just like, oh, I guess
so it's hereditary, right? Something's inherited from your family. But what do you when you think of someone calls something a genetic problem, what do you think? Maybe you don't talk about this with your friends?
No, we talk about this all the time.
What do you think? What does that mean in regard to the gene? What do you think it means? Like, when you envision someone says it's genetic, what do you think that means?
You're just like, oh, damn, I guess.
Like, do you think of it as like a genetic mutation? Like there's a mutation in the gene, like there's something wrong with the gene?
No, I guess I've never really thought about genes that in depth, really. I just was like, oh, I can't see that well. Nobody else in my family can. I guess that's just, those are just the cards that I was dealt.
You got bad eye genes. Okay, so most people, that and I think even a lot of people that write articles like in news or whatever, when they talk about something is genetic, most people think that means a genetic mutation, meaning that there's something wrong with the gene. And there's a structural difference, or there's a bad gene that you got, right? That this gene it's not a good version of that gene that does something that, creates a protein in a certain pathway. And that may lead to a disease. But a lot of people hear things like depression is genetic or other diseases are genetic. So that thinking is completely wrong. And that's where epigenetics is important, because there is and this is important that people know, there is not one mental health issue that, for the most part, that has ever been related to a single gene mutation. So there are no gene mutations that cause most mental health and even most diseases. There's not like a bad gene that's doing that, or a deleted gene, or there are some genes that where you can get different versions of it that are better than others. But even that, don't really know exactly what that means. Epigenetics is important because most people hear that something is genetic, and if it's inherited, so meaning that if somebody else in your family has it or had it, whether it's your father, your mother, your grandmother, whatever, then again, people think, well, that has to be a genetic disorder. And the thing about that is that most people, if they hear that something's genetic or that a bad gene or they got a bad gene, they think there's nothing I can do about it, because there isn't. There isn't anything at this point that really medical science can do that really has an effect on a genetic mutation, right? Gene splicing, things like that. That isn't like a thing really yet. So like in regard to autism, for years, because it seemed to run in families, and even though only 19% or 18% of siblings actually have it, that they would say, well, it's genetic. It must be genetic. What does that mean? So people assume, well, it's a bad gene. There's an autism gene. There's an ADHD gene. There's a dyslexia gene. And I can't do anything about it because I got a bad gene, right? And that's how a lot of people think about it.
Yeah.
And I might pass that on to my kids, and they're going to have it. So there's nothing they can do about it. Completely wrong, right? That's not the way it works at all. There is no autism gene. There is no ADHD gene. There is no dyslexia gene. And, there are people out there, that geneticists, that will say, well, there's multiple gene networks that we see that are associated with autism. Again, what does it mean? It really is built on things like we've talked about, traits, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's certain traits, personality traits, or really, your brain trait. Are you more right brain, left brain dominant? But epigenetics is cool because it really means that it doesn't come down to whether a gene is damaged or broken or deleted. It comes down to the expression of your genes. So we all have about 25,000 genes. Most of them we still don't really know what they do for or what they're for. But most of them seem to be there for brain growth and development. That's like 84% of your genes are active during brain development, right? So pretty important thing. And they happen to be the most susceptible genes because they are very sensitive to environmental factors. And these environmental factors play a role in turning them on or turning them off, right? So either inhibiting them or activating them. And so in everybody, there is a version of the combination of our expression of our genes where we're like superhuman. We're like one of the best people on the planet, right?
Yeah,
one of the
that's so
smartest, one of the healthiest, one of the mentally, well, physically, hormones, everything. And there's also a version of us where we may be like one of the worst or least healthiest people on the planet.
Yeah.
Where we end up in an institution or whatever.
Okay.
And that has to do with the way your genes become expressed, not changing the genes. So there's two terms. One is genotype, is the genes you're born with. Mm-hmm. And you get that, right? You get that from your family and from your, from generations. But then your phenotype, it's what you look like, what you act like, your personality. And that can change. Your genotype can't change, but the expression of your genes can change in all different combinations so much that you could even, look different. You could be taller. There's studies showing identical twins that grew up in different households that were separated at birth. And I could show you many pictures of this where...
It's the plot of Parent Trap.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a really messed up plot that you don't split up your kids like that just because you got divorced. But anyway, carry on.
Where you could see one of them is, 6 feet tall and like pretty healthy looking, full head of hair. Another person is like 5'5", overweight and balding.
I'd be so pissed if I was like, why do you look like that?
But identical genes.
Yeah.
So just to go to show you.
Yeah, like how your environment changes things.
Like how can someone be 5'5" and the other one 6 foot, right? I mean,
Is
wouldn't
it like
think...
a belief system or it's just like...
No, it's literally, the way your hormones are produced, the amount of hormones, the amount of growth hormone you have produced at what time in your life can determine how long your bones grow and how tall you are.
That's so crazy.
How healthy your hair is.
Yeah.
The shape of your face can be altered based on the production of hormones at specific times, or your muscular development can be affected, your metabolism. All of that can be changed. And so that's where epigenetics is really cool, because it's a very hopeful message. The idea that, genes are destiny. And this is really something that started to be talked about like in the early 2000s, late 90s. And I remember the cover of, I think, Discover and Scientific American, I think in 2010, and the same month basically had epigenetics, genes are not your destiny. And so,
wow,
it's an idea that you can alter your gene expression at any time in your life, and not only alter you and your body, your health, and how you look and how you feel, but also multiple generations after you.
Yeah, people like before they get pregnant will now, and I know you wrote a book about this. I think it's is it your book titled Autism that it's about like prenatal stuff, but so you guys should check that out if you're trying to get pregnant. But normally like the woman does so much to prepare her body beforehand, but my two friends recently decided that they were like wanted to have a baby, and so my guy friend, he decided to stop drinking for like 9 months before they even got pregnant, because he was like, well, if she's gonna have to like go through this, then I should have to go through something kind of similar or whatever. But so he kind of got himself to the healthiest point he could be before they got pregnant, and then now obviously she's not drinking or anything like that because she's pregnant. But I thought that was interesting because I guess it's like that. I mean, it's the combination of both of their genes. So both bodies need to be as healthy as they can be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The contribution preconception genetically is pretty equal. And the epigenetic contribution is pretty equal. So, and those are the main factors that are going to affect your child. Preconception factors. So, let's get into, again, a little bit of what epigenetics means. So,
yeah, did that make sense what I just said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, it made perfect.
I was thinking like maybe he was like turning on different genes or turning off certain genes.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, from doing that, because, alcohol has an effect on your genes and your gene expression, just like everything does pretty much. And either for good or bad. That's the point. So epigenetics is essentially a science that says, first of all, every cell in your body has exactly the same DNA.
Okay.
So why doesn't every cell in your body look or do exactly the same thing?
I don't know.
That's epigenetics.
Wow.
So again, you look at it and say, why is your liver cell a liver cell? Why does your heart cell become a heart cell? We hear about stem cells, right? So stem cells are basically these called equipotentiating cells, meaning they can be anything.
Okay.
You have stem cells that can become anything.
Equipotentiating cells.
Yeah, say that 5 times fast.
I'm not going to.
So you have these cells, and they're basically looking for direction. So you have this DNA code in every cell. It's like a book. And each chapter has instructions on creating a different cell with different function out of the same material. So, there's one chapter that's how do I create a kidney cell so that it operates properly? And then out of the same stem cell, another part of the genetic code is activated that will build it into a muscle cell or a heart cell or a brain cell. And so the idea that it's not about the genetic code, it's about what part of the genetic code is activated. So what activates it? There are different chemicals, in our body that can activate genes and cause those genes to become expressed. So we have a code that is, double helix, obviously the genes and what we call nucleotides. And there's what we call translational and transcriptional RNA. So it rides over the genes and basically reads it like a code, like Braille almost, right? So it rides over it and it transcribes it, and then it translates it into a chemical structure, a protein.
Okay.
And those proteins are used to make up our body, or hormones or chemicals or neurotransmitters or whatever in our body, right? Mm-hmm. So there are molecules called methyl molecules that are produced in our body, mostly when we're not doing great things to ourselves. So if you're drinking all night or smoking, or if you're unhealthy, or if you're really under a lot of stress, or you're doing things that aren't really great for yourself, you produce more methyl molecules.
Okay.
And these methyl molecules can attach to parts of your genetic code, and they block it. They don't damage it. They don't alter the structure in any way. They just block it. They actually make it like tighter, so that some of the nucleotides are not as accessible. And when the transcriptional RNA comes over it, it doesn't read it. It's blocked. And so it doesn't see it. And so what it translates it to is a completely different protein, or a very different protein than what's there. But the right code is there. So the difference is, if you have a genetic mutation, part of the gene is literally damaged or broken or deleted. It's not there. That you can't change. But these methyl marks, we can wipe our genes clean. They can be wiped clean. So essentially, when your friend is making a decision not to drink, over that period of time, he may have wiped some of those methyl marks off his genes.
Wow.
So that his gene may be expressed better. And the most common genes are the ones that have to do with your brain. So that has a big effect on the brain of your child, and the optimal development of that.
Oh my goodness. Guys, these are like the dinner conversations that I grew up with. My dad's like, and the methyl molecule goes to the nuclei. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm in third grade.
But look, I couldn't even get you to say that if a gene mutation was damaged, because you're too smart. You're like, you're not getting me with that one.
Raised me well. No, but you did a great job of explaining that to a normal person like myself. So I'm sure everyone else understood what you just said. That was actually literally fascinating.
I thought everybody said you're weird, not normal.
It's been a consistent thing I've been getting lately. I'm trying to lean into it.
But weird in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again,
well, you said something about 11 years.
Yeah. So the research on this really started in like the 90s.
Okay.
And this is where the hereditary thing comes into play, which is important, because in the past, it was believed that the only way you could pass on some sort of bad trait, a disease or something, to your offspring was through a genetic mutation, because it was believed that, so the way I look at it is like, the sins of the parent, right? Like, I grew up going to Catholic school, and, they would basically say, that whatever you do, you basically get a black mark on your soul. And then when you go up to heaven, your soul's revealed. And if you have a lot of black marks, you're going to hell, right? Ooh. So it's kind of the way epigenetics works, meaning that we develop these marks in our life, and there's acetylation and methylation. Acetylation causes genes to express. Methylation will inhibit genes. But the question is, we may inhibit a bad gene, like a cancer gene, and that's a good thing. But we may also inhibit a good gene that is building, neurotransmitters in our brain, and that's a bad thing. So we don't know enough, to direct it that way right now. So it's not able to be directed that way. But the point is that through our lives, we do things, and we can develop these what's called DNA methylation marks on our genes, and that can alter the expression of our genes, and that can alter our physical appearance, that can alter how we feel, it can alter everything about us, and especially our mental health. So all of this kind of goes back to these two guys, Waterland and Jerdal, in 2000. They did this study with mice. And there's this type of mouse called an agouti mouse. And it has yellowish fur, and they always are obese and have diabetes, and they usually die of cancer. And so they use in research a lot. So they had these agouti mice. And they fed the mothers before they were pregnant, so preconception, foods that were high in methyl molecules. So things like garlic and beets and different vegetables that gave them a lot of methyl molecules. And when they got pregnant and had babies, the babies came out and they were thin and brown, did not have diabetes or obesity, and didn't die of cancer.
Weird.
And all they did was alter their diet. And so what it did was it inhibited this agouti gene. And the agouti gene not only creates the yellow fur, but it also predisposed them to diabetes, obesity, and cancer. And so that was like earth-shattering, because it was, wait a second, we can affect, just through diet, just through changing diet, we can affect literally how our babies look, like the genes they become expressed. And so that was pretty wild. But then the research really started getting heated up. And the idea before was that, again, if you were going to pass on any sort of negative trait or bad thing, it had to be with a gene mutation, meaning physically the gene had to be bad. So when it came together, the genes of the parents and came together, one would pass on, let's say, a bad gene or a bad copy, or two of them would, and then that would produce the same disease in their offspring, which, happens. Obviously, there are diseases like that. And they believed that from epigenetic standpoint, these epigenetic marks, that during conception, they were all wiped clean, meaning that everybody started out with a clean genetic slate. Like you have a clean soul, everybody, right? Mm-hmm. The research started coming out showing that that's not the case, that those marks could be passed down. So a gene could be turned off in you, and it may not have that much of effect on you. You may have turned it off later on in life because you were smoking a lot or drinking a lot or whatever.
I would never do any of those things.
No. And it doesn't have an effect on you, let's say, or your brain, but it can be passed down to your children or up to 11 generations. So meaning that, so you could look at somebody and they say, well, schizophrenia runs in the family. I mean, everybody's had it. This person, this person, this person, or leukemia has had it. I knew this one family once where everybody in the family, they had like 10 kids and like 7 of them died of leukemia.
Oh my God. That's
right?
Terrible.
And you think there must be a leukemia gene. There really isn't. So what happened? Well, you look and say, well, they were raised in a good family and they were all athletes and whatever. But we don't know what happened with the grandfather, the great-grandfather. Like, it's been shown that people that are in war or in famine, or people that are that are raised in really bad conditions or during really stressful times, when they follow out their offspring, multiple generations down the road expresses a disease, or maybe obese, or maybe not. Like if you're in an area where, let's say, there's starvation, like there's famine, the interesting thing is the offspring that come out tend to be obese. So that it altered the way the genes are, and your production of fat as a way of protecting you if you're in famine.
Oh, wow. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So it's just really, really fascinating. But the good news is that, we can alter that. We can change that. So we can stop that. You don't have to pass that down. Most diseases and almost all mental health issues are epigenetic. They're not genetic. And they may be hereditary, but that doesn't mean it's genetic. That doesn't mean it's a genetic mutation. It's epigenetic. And this is a really key distinction. Because again, I remember when I first started going out there and teaching, teachers, special ed teachers, therapists, doctors, and I'd start talking about how we could change, things like ADHD or dyslexia. And most of people would say, and literally people stand up and say, but these are genetic. There's nothing you can do about them. I said, what do you mean they're genetic?
You said, excuse me?
Yeah, no. I remember I had one guy stood up, and he was at a lecture, and when I was talking about this, and the cover of Time magazine had just come out, and on it was again, big picture of DNA, and it said Epigenetics. Your genes are not your destiny.
Yeah.
And so this guy stood up. I think he was a local MD or something. And he said, I'm a doctor, and I've never heard of this term epigenetics. And I think this is a term you're just making up. I don't believe it. And then I hit the next slide, which was Time Magazine.
What a fool.
And I was like, I don't think you should ever stand up and make a comment like that in public because you sound really ignorant. Like, you're a doctor, you should know what epigenetics is, since it impacts every aspect, and every disease you're working with, for the most part, is epigenetic.
He
And
probably up and moved his entire life.
He
after
turned
that.
bright red.
Yeah.
He sat down, and then at some point he kind of skulked out of the,
See ya.
So it's just, again, people are just don't know about it. So they throw these terms out, and I remember therapists would say to me, "What do you mean there's no genetic mutation?" I'm like, "There's not a genetic mutation. So you can alter the gene expression by doing things. Your therapies can do that. All different things." I think I told you about, there's one study looking at mice and raising their offspring. So mice, what they do for their babies, what mouse moms do, is they lick their babies. That's kind of the same as us, like holding them or soothing them. And there are some moms that are good at licking their babies and others that are not so good. And they showed that if you looked at the offspring of the mothers that really do a good job and the ones that don't, the babies look very different. The ones where the moms are doing a good job, they're big and healthy and muscular, and their hair and their fur is really nice. On the other animals, they're thinner and they're more anxious, and they have, like, their hair is kind of dull and patchy. And so they looked to say, well, what is the licking actually doing? What is it changing? And they saw that the genes that produce cortisol were literally altered in their expression, not the genes, but the expression of the gene, so that the mouse mom licking the baby well inhibited the cortisol stress response gene and didn't produce as much cortisol. And the mouse moms that didn't do so well didn't inhibit that gene. And so that was one of the main effects. But here's the cool thing. They switched the babies. They gave the babies that were with the mom that wasn't good, and they gave it to the mom that was a good licker, and switched them. And what happened was the appearance of the babies completely switched.
Oh, wow. Oh, that makes me kind of sad. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. When you look at neglect and people that are born with neglect, the whole ACEs thing. Yeah. I had a lot of people that responded to that show because it's such a big deal.
I did too. Yeah, I got messages from people I did not expect about that one.
Yeah. So that's a major epigenetic effect.
Well,
right?
I guess it's just like, because I feel like generational trauma, and we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but that's like kind of a term that's become like more popular recently, and kind of, those types of things bother me sometimes because we're not a family of excuses. So like sometimes when people are like, because my family went through this however many years ago, now I'm holding on to it. And I'm like, whatever, save it. But I think that, in a lot of senses, I guess that's actually true. But it's interesting that it's like in a spiritual sense and in a physical sense, because people do like inner child work and like find out that their mom went through this and their grandma went through this and whatever. And it's all something that they kind of carry within them in an emotional way or a spiritual way. But it's interesting that it's also in a physical way.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, honestly, it makes sense.
Yes. And it's, again, it comes down to, if something runs in a family, because the brain genes are going to run in the family. So your brain is going to be like your parents' genes to a certain extent. And it could be like mom, it could be like dad. And what does that mean? It means that, like, in a family.
I'm a doctor and I'm a genius.
It means that you're, have this right brain dominant creativity that is there. And there's music and there's art in your family on both sides. And that is a trait that's there, and that's how you view the world. And we talked about if your genes are expressed where some of those networks that, let's say for music, are really, really super strong, like you're born with really super strong. And then because you're good at it and you like it, you work at it so much like you did, and you build that up even more. But around those areas of your brain are also emotions like anxiety or fear or shame or embarrassment, rejection sensitivity. So that also kind of comes with that. And then as you activate that side, you kind of inhibit the other side a bit. And so those genes that might be, the balance of it, like for reading or for,
I feel
math,
a little bit personally attacked right now. I don't know. This is getting really specific.
Or for happiness or pride or whatever, right? Those things go down a little bit. And it ultimately creates your mental health. It creates your education. It creates, what you are. I mean, ultimately, your brain is going to also regulate your hormones. It's going to regulate your stress response. It's going to regulate your gut, your digestion, what you do. If you're eating properly, eating healthy, or you're not. If you have an eating disorder, ultimately, that's what happens. So epigenetics is one of the physical things that literally can alter gene expression. It's going to affect the gene expression on your brain more than anything else. And it can be passed down through multiple generations. So not understanding this, it could be passed on. So, the trauma that your great grandmother had, and they did a really great study on this. During World War II, Holland, the Netherlands was basically almost split in half. And on the Western side was the Allies. On the Eastern side was Germans, and it was really split. And as the war was winding down and the Nazis were losing, there was less and less food being available on the Nazi side. And that was also part of, the war. They were kind of, cutting their supply lines and everything, whatever. And so the people on that side were starving to death. And the people on the other side had no problem. They had all the food they wanted and everything. So right after the war was over, right after World War II, some scientists realized this was like an incredible human experiment here, because you just took a country that almost is identical demographics, right? So before the war, almost all the demographics were the same. There wasn't that much of a difference. The genes were similar, whatever. And now you did an experiment where half the population you starved and had them under incredible stress, and the other half you didn't. So they decided to start following out, like the babies that were born to the moms during either one. And they followed them out for like 50, 60 years, I think. So they were able to see multiple generations. And they saw that there were huge differences in the two populations of the babies. And again, a lot of it was obesity. The starving group had a lot more diseases and also had more obesity than the non-starving group.
Wow.
And it went on for multiple generations. So, and there's other studies like that, wherever there's been like famine or, like a tsunami, or they've done studies like that, and it sees that it can alter. But here's the thing. We can change that. You can choose as an individual to change your own genes by just adopting a healthy lifestyle, by eating healthy, exercising, taking vitamins, trying to, if you have deficiencies in your body, finding out what those are, and then taking things or supplements or eating food, the way you use your brain, the way you use your mental health, your emotional state. You can do all those things. Your friend who decided not to drink for 9 months, he altered his gene expression. That was his choice.
Yeah.
Now, he could have come from an alcoholic family. And again, I don't know him. I'm not, and that, or he could come from a family where, because of that alcoholism, there's, who knows, the abusive parents or abusive husbands or whatever. And he wanted to alter that. And by not drinking, he may have in fact altered that, not only in him, but in his children.
Yeah, I always wonder when there's like, I don't know, like you grow up with families where there's like 4 kids or 3 kids and it's like 2 of them are like ripped and, you know, have all like the greatest genes, and then like one is like just very overweight, or, you know, I just always wonder how that within siblings also just ends up that way sometimes. But
yeah, well, it's also the combination. I mean, what genes you get is such kind of like a crapshoot. You know, there's a lot of genes, and you get a lot of genes from your mom and your dad, and there are a lot of different choices, and how they come together has a lot of effect. And that starts even before you're born. So it starts with the preconception of how your genes are. And then there's, you know, literally billions of sperm trying to get there, which sperm that all carry different DNA, and what gets to the egg and what doesn't, and what ends up fertilizing and what doesn't.
yeah.
You know, there's so many endless possibilities and combinations. And that's why, you know, some people do have gene mutations or have limitations of their genes, but everybody can optimize the expression of their own genes by just choosing to do so. So that's where you can end relational, you know, generational trauma. You can end the cycle of abuse. You can end, you know, being obese in everybody's family.
That's pretty incredible.
And everybody has the power to do that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't even know this simple thing because they think, well, it's genetic, it's hereditary, I'm doomed.
Right. And you're not. Because
No.
it's just the expression of your gene. It's
And
not,
that's the way a lot of doctors
permanent
think.
thing.
Because most doctors think, well, what matters most is family history. I mean, that's not true, actually. It is important, but it doesn't mean that it has to be that way.
Well, it's important so that you can make yourself aware of it and be the person that maybe changes it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, they say, well, your mother had diabetes, you're going to have diabetes. There's no diabetes gene, right? So why do I have to have diabetes?
Oh, weird.
So, you know, not really. I mean, there may be genes that have an effect on your predisposition, but, you know, it's not like you passed on this, you know, high blood pressure gene. There's no gene for high blood pressure.
Weird.
Yeah. So just because my dad had high blood pressure, I have to have high blood pressure? No, not at all. But your body and the makeup of your body and the makeup of your genes, if you live the same lifestyle, if you're overweight, if you eat the same way that you grew up and, you know, and you don't exercise like your parents did, then you're maybe likely to develop hypertension because you have a similar
you're expressing the genes similarly as they are expressing it as well.
Exactly.
Wow. Oh my God. I don't know what is wrong with me, but I can't stop thinking about how maybe I could end up being like someone in Harry Potter. It's just like this whole time I'm like, I could be Harry Potter. I don't know why, but I feel like I could.
Who would you be? Totally
probably
different,
Harry. I mean,
tall,
I'm not
weird
trying
girl.
to have main character syndrome, but I mean, if I had to choose somebody, but like maybe I could have superpowers. You just said we could be the most super version of ourselves.
Well, listen, I mean, we also have talked a bit about, you know, a little bit. We haven't really talked about it too much on here, but the whole telepathy tape thing.
I know.
Right? So the kids I work with, and I work with these kids that have superpowers. I mean, I literally see it every day. You know, we have this kid, Bobby. He's great. I love this kid. And his name is Bobby De Niro, and I won't say his last name, right? And his brother's name, so De Niro is his middle.
Said his last name.
De Niro is the middle name.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he has a brother named Frankie Sinatra.
Oh, I
and then there's
love
an
these
Italian
parents.
last name. I know, it's great. And Bobby would come in, and he was he used to be very emotionally dysregulated. I mean, he would just start screaming and yelling, and, you know, he's full-blown autistic, but verbal kid. And Bobby would come up to you and he'd go, Dr. Melillo, when were you born? And if you gave him your birth date, he would immediately tell you what day you were born on and who was the president of the United States.
That's so cool.
Yeah, like with me, I think I might have said this before, but I always thought I was born in 1960, so that's when John Kennedy was elected president. So I'm like, when I was born, John Kennedy was the president, right? I had the coolest president ever, young, cool, good looking, Camelot. And that's what I always thought. And Bobby, I told him when he said to me, I think you were born on a Tuesday or Wednesday, I forget. And he said, and Dwight Eisenhower was the president. I said, no.
You're like, no.
It was John F. Kennedy. He's like, no, it was Dwight. And I was like, wait. Oh, I was born in October. He was elected in November. Right? So I was like, oh, damn, he was right. Bobby was right. And he could do it instantly. And, one time we said to Bobby, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? How do you instantly go back and know exactly what day? And he said something like, it wasn't clear, but he said something like he goes back 700 years and can just see it in his head. Boom, 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 boom. And sees like making a calendar go backwards.
That's crazy.
Right?
Wow.
So this is this superpower.
Yeah, that is a superpower for sure. To be able to see things in your, that's not something.
So I work with these kids that have these superpowers. But again, it's just areas of their brain, in his case, left brain, that are just so tightly wound. And what's pretty cool is, so I recently saw this kid and he's doing great. I mean, he before us, he had no friends. He was struggling in school and he was, he was really struggling in many, many ways. Now he has a bunch of friends and he won student of the month 4 or 5 times. He's doing great in school. He's really happy. And he came in and he was, pretty mellow, pretty cool. And I was like, hey, Bobby, how you doing? He said, good. And so we had a new therapist in our office. And I said, Bobby, you want to do the birthday thing? And he looked and he went, oh, okay. Whereas before, he'd walk up to you and go, what's your birthday? Right?
Yeah.
And it was the first thing he said to people.
Yeah.
And now he was kind of like I was bothering him. He rolled his eyes okay. And I started laughing because I was like, that's so funny. And so then he asked her and she told him and he was kind of slow. He went, I think it was a Monday and it was Bill Clinton, like that. But he still did it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't this obsessive thing that he couldn't stop doing. It was kind of he did it as a favor.
Right. Like a little party trick.
Right. So what did we do there? Well, first of all, we literally altered his brain. We altered his gene expression on his brain. And we didn't take away that ability. We just modified things so that he could regulate it and control it the way he wanted to.
Right.
So it became his choice.
Yeah. Instead of kind of an obsessive sort of almost
out of
Tourette's
control
type vibe.
Yeah. So we didn't take away the superpower. It's still there.
Yeah.
But that's also, so all of us literally do have these superpowers in us. And there's studies, showing people that have what's called acquired savant syndrome, where, you hit your head and then all of a sudden you become a musical virtuoso.
I'm trying to have that happen. I hit my head on roller skates recently and guess what? Nothing happened. I just felt like an idiot.
Well, in the old days in the cartoons where, they would hit an animal on the head or, a cartoon character on the head and he would lose his memory and then they'd hit him again and would get it back, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work that way. But yeah, so this is all really fascinating stuff. The main theme is that you have so much control over how you look, what you think, who you become. Everybody has super version of themselves in there. And you can bring that out and it's all lifestyle driven. It's all lifestyle driven. So you're born with certain genes. So what? It doesn't matter. You can alter that. It's like if you were playing cards and, you playing poker and you got dealt cards, but you had an ability to change the cards, right? You could make a 2 into an ace or something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we can do.
Wow.
And so you can completely change the hand you're given. So you could get, be dealt terrible cards and end up winning every poker game if you know how to do it.
If you know how to count cards. No, but if you know how to change your cards, yes.
Yes.
That's kind of a perfect way to put it. And also, this is such a positive episode.
Yes.
You hear that, guys? All of you could be superheroes.
Or Harry Potter.
Or Harry. Well, there's only one Harry Potter, and that's going to be me. But you can be anything else.
But Harry Potter's really short.
Oh, no. We'll change the expression of those genes.
That's true. There you go. So Harry Potter's now this tall, beautiful female.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you
okay, good. Why not? That's epigenetics.
Well, okay, great. I think this made a lot of sense, actually. Even though you said a lot of really big words, still followed everything you said.
Yeah.
And
well, the audience is getting smarter as we go along.
Yeah, we're changing your epigenetics for you. You're welcome.
We have. And by the way, to talk about that, when you learn something new, you literally physically within 1 hour can see a change measurably in your brain, so that things can change quickly as well. Like you can literally change the structure of your brain.
Wow.
After learning something, and you can see it in 1 hour. Okay.
That's freaking cool. Okay, your guys' brains are going to be changed. Just check it out in an hour.
They already are.
Okay, until next time, this is the best. I love you.
I love you too, honey.